Welcome into Talk Illini. Like I said, we're going to be coming at you with a new episode pretty much every day at this point because Illinois is heading to the Final Four to face off against UConn. Great time. I'm your host, JR, joined most times, if not by always, with Sonny Verma here. Sometimes Sonny joins without me. It's just, it is what we do here at Talk Illini, but we're glad to be here talking about the differences between the Illinois-UConn matchup that happened November 28th. I think I have the date right there. So that's pretty impressive by me, honestly. You got to like the video just because I remember the date off the top of my head. But really, really cool stuff to see Illinois in the Final Four against UConn. This UConn team is somebody that Sonny and I talked about before the Iowa game. Is like, this is who we want to see if Illinois does make it to the Final Four. And between the Duke and UConn team, I didn't think it would be from a 19-point comeback and everything that UConn had, but definitely very interesting. Sonny, I made the video about the 5 things I learned from that game. I know you saw some of it as well. Just any overarching thoughts on that game, UConn, or anything before we get into the differences between UConn and Illinois from what we saw earlier in the season?
Just the resiliency from UConn, being down 19 points against a team like Duke. Illinois has a history of going up pretty big on opponents. And I think if nothing else, it proved that performance on Sunday, that no matter what the score is, even if Illinois gets off to a really hot start and they're up double figures, you cannot rest against this Huskies team. The DNA that they've had, I think Dan Hurley's like 17-3 in his last X amount of tournament games or something like that. They know what it takes to win. And so Illinois, no doubt about it, is going to have to play for 40 solid minutes to make sure when that buzzer sounds that their score is higher than UConn's.
Now, you tell me if I'm just being a hater here or not. Maybe I'm just a hater, and that's okay if I am. But I went back and watched the last 10 minutes of that Duke and UConn game, and nobody's trying to take anything away from UConn here. They're a fantastic team, and nobody should be underestimating UConn. Obviously, Illinois has had their struggles against UConn, the past 2 matchups and everything else, so nobody's trying to take anything away here. But I felt like Duke lost that game more than UConn won it. I mean, there were some coaching errors there and stuff. And of course, UConn gets the steal at the end, hits the shot and everything. But I don't know, like even the missed free throw and everything that UConn had before that felt like UConn didn't really have a great setup from the timeout they had before that. And they kind of, I wouldn't say lucked into a point there, but Duke definitely helped them out there a little bit. Listen, like I said, I'm not taking anything away from UConn, but it did feel like Duke kind of gave that game away more than UConn won it.
But I mean, can't we say the same for Illinois for multiple games this season? I think of UCLA being up 23 and then obviously them coming back and winning the game at the buzzer. Illinois can be vulnerable to that. Now, granted, that's regular season Illinois, where that team seems to be a lot different than the version that we've seen here in March Madness. But if anything else, that's kind of what I mean. Like, UConn's going to wait for you to make the mistake, and Illinois got to be sure that they're locked in, that they're focused, and that they're grinding it out. And even if they're up 15 points by some chance, you got to act like you're down by 3-4 points and continue to keep executing and not wasting any possessions, because that UConn team, they're ready. They're ready to pounce on any mistakes that you make.
Yeah, I think you're totally accurate there. And I think that when you look at these two teams, both of these teams are playing at a different level in the tournament than they have been playing in the regular season. Now, Illinois faced UConn back in November in the regular season, so that was quite a while ago. Sonny, what is one of the biggest differences you see in, maybe you can start with Illinois or UConn, whatever you want to start with, in what we saw in that matchup before? I think the biggest thing is probably like minutes disparity, and we're going to probably talk about that at some point. But what's one of the biggest differences you see in this coming matchup than what we saw in the previous matchup back in November?
I mean, I think I'm just going to go with the low-hanging fruit in the sense of Keaton Wagler played, 14 minutes in that game? If you recall, that was, again, in November, so in the first month and a half of playing. I believe it was Illinois' second loss in a row at the time. But there was a reason that Illinois shifted their complete offensive identity essentially after that game. Keaton Wagler was very much an off-the-ball type of player, more of a complementary role. Same thing with David Mirkovic, which I guess we can factor into both into one. But it's just the identity of that team was, hey, let's be senior based or veteran based. Let's run the offense around Kylan Boswell, Andre Stojakovic, maybe Tommy Visic, and let's see what this team can do. It was shortly after that game where I'm sure it's just the practices over and over again. Brad's probably seeing something in Keaton, in David, where they kind of shifted their focus. So first and foremost, that has to be it, because as soon as that switch happened, as soon as Brad handed the keys to Keaton Wagler, this became a historic offensive team. And so that's why a lot of the tape that Dan Hurley and that coaching staff may have had leading into that November matchup, he's got to toss it away and start anew, because this is a brand new offense.
Yeah, for sure. Do you know who the second most minutes played in the Illinois versus UConn game was for Illinois? Kylan Boswell was number one. He played 39 minutes in the game. Do you know who played the second most minutes in that game for Illinois?
See, if I was a dishonorable man, I would just take a quick peek to my right and cheat. So no,
I don't know. But you're not.
No, but I won't.
Ben Humrichous.
Okay.
And I think you and I may have had a conversation about Ben Humrichous after that game, because I think that was still when you and I were having some of our Ben Humrichous discourse a little bit, and that I'm sure everybody's enjoyed so much. No, but yeah, Ben Humrichous played 26 minutes in that game, 5 points, 1 of 3 from 3 in that game, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, and added 1 steal and 1 offensive rebound. Kylan Boswell was the star of the show in that game, 25 points, 8 of 16, 2 of 8 from 3, but he did go 7 of 7 from the free throw line. And Tomislav Visic actually had a double-double in that game, 11 points, 10 rebounds for Big T. And like you mentioned, that was really what we saw a lot of early on in the season, was the offense being run through Kylan Boswell. Now you see the offense run much more through Keaton Wagler. You see the spark plug of Andre Stojakovic coming off the bench. You see much more versatility with David Mirkovic and how they're using him to bring the ball up the court. And just overall, they're trusting the freshmen on this team a whole lot more, which to me speaks volumes about their development throughout the season and just how things have gone. Illinois also at that time was only a top 10 offense in KenPom. Now, I don't think it's been the offense that has won Illinois games in the tournament. It's been more the defense, in my opinion, but still, this offense has elevated. They are the number 1 team in KenPom now after how Purdue played against Arizona, which helps them out. But also in that game, Sonny, that game against UConn, for pretty much the entire season, that was Illinois' worst 3-point shooting percentage of the season, 20.7%. The only one that was next to it was Maryland. At Maryland was the last game of the regular season, 20.8%. Do you know what the worst shooting percentage from 3 is now on the season after the game we just had against Iowa? Which I think I just gave it away there.
Yeah, I mean, it was 3 for 17, so I would assume that's the new contender right there.
That is, yes. The Iowa game, 17.6% from 3 of 17. And that was a game where you came away with a 12-point win. So to go from a 12-point win, or to go from a 13-point loss to UConn shooting 20.7%, to now being in the tournament, and Iowa's not UConn, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make that comparison, but to be able to say we shot 3 percentage points less in the game in the tournament against Iowa, and then you win by 12, I think it speaks a lot to this team's defense, their versatility, and their ability to play in multiple different ways now, where I don't think you saw that at the beginning of the season nearly as much.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I'm trying to think. What would you say the second major thing that's sticking? I don't want to spoil it or what I want to say, so let me throw it right back at you.
Yeah. I would say rebounding is probably the next biggest thing for me. The rebounding of this Illinois team, the focus on it, and how much they're crashing the boards. You know, Illinois, one of the best things that they do right now is how they're able to crash the boards, but not let the other team get out in fast break. Now, you saw Iowa have a couple of opportunities with that in their game against Illinois, but Illinois just did a really good job of not allowing that nearly as much. So it's not just the rebounding for Illinois, but it also is the way that Brad Underwood and Tyler Underwood are having this offense form, so that way they're not just all crashing the boards, but they are crashing the boards in a way that is strategic, so that way the opponent can't just get out and run the fast break like crazy.
Yeah, I like that. Last game, Illinois had 38 rebounds and UConn had 43, and we know that if Illinois is to be victorious in almost any game, their number 1 strategy is always to out rebound and what Brad essentially equates to outwork the opponent, and shooting 35% plus from 3-point range. At least that's always my my benchmarks for this Illinois team. But yeah, no, you're right. It's basically once they change the structure of this offense, rebounding. I mean, I guess rebounding has always been a focus, but now when you play with a 5 out, it becomes even more important. And I think it's just this new wave, because you don't really see much of this style of offense at the college level. At least you see a little bit of it at the NBA level, but rebounding, I think, especially now with the emergence of Terrence Reed Jr. I guess I'll just jump to the next big change from that November showing. In the previous game, Terrace played 15 minutes. He had 2 points, 5 rebounds on 0 of 3 from the field, just made 2 out of 4 free throws. Now, I think it's arguable he's UConn's best player, and he's just a behemoth down low. It's a matchup I'm absolutely looking forward to, just because of how Tommy and Z seem to be a little revitalized once that calendar turned to March. And I think that battle down low, Terrace is the type of player that could eat guys like Ivicic alive, just because he is so much stronger, whereas opposed to the Ivicics are more finesse type of players. And that's something that I think Illinois is going to have to game plan for, because they didn't really have to game plan for that in November. But he's really found his own, his place with this UConn Husky team right now. And he's going to be a guy that Illinois is going to have to try to at least limit. I don't know if they can shut him down.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And that was something that I mentioned in the previous video, and what we learned because of UConn and the emergence of Terrence Reed Jr. He's been emerging all season long, but really the emergence in the NCAA tournament that he's been having, it's been huge for them to have that. How do you think Brad Underwood handles Terrence Reed Jr.? I have another one I'll get to in just a minute, and then we have a couple in the comments that I'll get to. But just real quick, like, how do you think that Brad Underwood in Illinois is going to handle Terrence Reed Jr.? Do you think it's going to be Big T on him the entire game? Do you think they're going to put Z on him? I think they might put David Mirkovic on him for a little bit of time. What are your thoughts?
I think Tommy has to just kind of take on that role, just because Caravan is a guy that I can see David having to kind of chase around. But, maybe this is just a game where, because UConn also struggled from 3-point land in their previous game, I think you might see a little more zone in this game than we've seen in games past. Big Z and Tommy, again, when it comes to pure physicality, Tommy's bigger, right? He's thicker. And so I think Terrace is going to have a little tougher time trying to back him down and whatnot. But when it comes to, I think the key importance is going to be, look, I don't think Brad's going to care if Terrace goes off for 25 and 20, or what was it, 30 and 20 that he got in that first round of playoffs. I think what's going to be more important is that when Terrace gets his shot off, that he's boxed out, and that when other UConn players, Huskies, are shooting, that he is boxed out. I think Brad would care more that Terrace doesn't reach 15 rebounds than he does if Terrace reaches 30 points, because Illinois has shown that they don't mind if one guy tries to beat you offensively, but they don't. It's the intangibles that they care about.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get to 2 comments of some stuff some people had in the comment section of the video with their thoughts on some differences, and then if we have time, we'll end with one more from me. Jim Decker said the first game, this Wagler didn't play much and only had 3 points. We did point that out, and he says now the other freshmen didn't play that much either. Now they are Illinois' top scorers. Definitely in talking about Wagler and Mirkovic there. You agree with Jim Decker, Sonny?
Absolutely. And, if we're going to be fair and objective, we can say the same thing for UConn. They had, what's his name? Mullins. I believe Illinois was the first game that he had coming back. So at that point, you didn't have much tape on Braylon Mullins. But now you see, I know he'd been struggling a little bit from the 3-point stripe in March, but you just saw him make one of those clutch shots in the history of March Madness. So that's another factor that Brad Underwood and Cameron Crocker that they're going to have to worry about.
Yeah, for sure. This other one coming in from Stop. I think this is the way his username is here, or their username is here. So, which it actually kind of goes into the next one I was going to say. So it works out perfectly here. It says Illinois is a completely different team than the one that lost in the Garden. The rebounding and defense are going to be X factors, just like they have been the last 2 games. A lot of things play into Illinois' favor in this one, as long as they show up ready to play. ILLINI. there for you. I totally agree, especially with the defensive point right now. Illinois is holding teams to less than 48% from inside the arc shooting the ball, and I think that bodes really well for this team going up against this UConn team. Look, do I expect Illinois to hold UConn to less than 48% shooting inside the arc? No, but do I expect them to hold them to a respectable number? Do I expect it to be closer to 50% than it is 60%? I think so. I think with the way this defense is playing right now, with the length that they're playing with, and how Cam Crocker has continued to kind of evolve this defense, how they are playing a little bit more zone and then moving into a more of a matchup kind of man-to-man thing. I do think they're confusing offenses a little bit more, and to me, it's been the biggest reason why Illinois is in the Final Four right now, is how much they've bought into the defense, how well they're playing defense right now, and also not just on the inside, but you got two good defensive stoppers now, not only Kylan Boswell, but believe it or not, Andre Stojakovic, with how he's playing on defense and how much effort he's putting there on that side of the ball too.
Yeah, Andre Stojakovic was the MVP of that game against Iowa, not just because of him coming in when Illinois was down 12-2, and he basically kickstarted an Illinois, I believe it was 9-0 run very early in the game, but just as much on the defensive side. Kylan Boswell has been a fantastic defensive player for the first 3 rounds of the NCAA tournament, but he was struggling against Bennett Sturts, which it's okay. There's a lot of players in the country that would struggle against a guy like Bennett Sturts. There's a reason he's going to be a high NBA draft pick next year, but Brad made the switch, put a little longer Andre on Bennett, and basically from that point on, it kind of limited Bennett's effectiveness, especially with Stojakovic's length more than anything else. One other thing, before we ended this, I did want to point out is just, I know we keep repeating that this team is so different, but if you look at this minutes disparity, Illinois played 10 guys in that game in November. Now, Illinois had a rotation, the rotation set at 8, and it's so set at 8 that even when one guy went down, Kylan Boswell, instead of migrating another guy into that 8th spot, Brad Underwood essentially just played 7 guys for that next for that month or so. And then when Stojakovic was down, we only played 6 guys against Wisconsin. So Brad knows who his guys are, the guys that he can absolutely trust. That game in late November was, I think, more of a he's feeling everything out, seeing what he's comfortable with, putting players in different positions and different environments, and seeing how they react. But now Brad knows who he likes in what situations, and he really doesn't deviate from that at all. And again, it's a lot different. I mean, Mihailo Petrovic played 18 minutes in that previous game against UConn. I don't think he played in 18 minutes combined since that game.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that was the other thing I was going to point out was Mihailo's minutes in that one. Now, Keaton Wagler did get into a little bit of foul trouble in that game. He did have 3 fouls, but Thomas Lavizic had 3 fouls in that game too, and that didn't stop him from playing 25 minutes either. So I completely agree with you. I think this team has found themselves. I didn't really want to mention that as like a big difference, because it's kind of it's kind of like a weak difference to say the team has found themselves, but I really do feel like Brad Underwood is found what he wants this team to be and how they can work together, guys coming off the bench and everything. And I think it's going to be really beneficial against UConn. Sonny, any final thoughts or anything before we get out of here?
No, it's just, this is the matchup I kind of wanted, right? This is, in a lot of ways, it's a redemption tour for Illinois. You had a chance to beat Houston, a team that beat you a couple years ago in the round of 32. And then now you have an opportunity against UConn, and who knows, you might get a chance against Michigan in the national title game. And, three teams that very notably have beaten you in the past. And basically, it's one of those where Illinois deserves to be here. And that's why I'm looking forward to the match. In no way do I sit here and feel like Illinois is a Cinderella team. Yeah, of the 4 teams remaining, maybe we've got the smallest brand name in some sort of way, just because the other teams have had a little bit more success, and Arizona is just a juggernaut all season long. But Illinois belongs amongst these Final Four, and that's why I'm so excited about the game on Saturday. And there's a reason that Illinois is actually favored in this game. It was 2.5 at the time of this recording, which I think surprised a lot of people. Vegas is giving this team a lot of respect.
They are, and they deserve a lot of respect, not only for how they played throughout the regular season, but just with the tournament, the way it's been, and how they've played. And you can argue, oh, they beat Iowa to get to the Final Four. Listen, that was a really good Iowa team the way they were playing, and they took down Florida, deservedly so. Took down Nebraska as well, and Illinois had to get through Houston to get here as well. So this is a very deserving Illinois team, and we're very excited to see how the game plays out in the Final Four. We will have videos and everything all leading up to it. So please do hit that like, subscribe button, visit Orange and Blue News, part of the On3 network, as there's more content coming over there as well. And we just really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for listening, watching. Thank you, Sonny, for joining us here. And we'll see you tomorrow with another video about this Illinois UConn matchup coming up. It's a great matchup, a lot of fun to talk about. We'll be here to talk about it all. Have a good one.